Nick suddenly snapped awake in terror. The second he glanced down, a horrified scream burst from his throat. His real legs were gone, replaced by a pair of mechanical limbs attached to his body. Overcome with panic and rage, he kicked the door with such force that it exploded off its hinges. He rushed outside, where armed guards immediately aimed their weapons at him. But at that exact moment, a strange surge of power flooded through his new legs. In the blink of an eye, he covered hundreds of yards. His speed was so incredible that even bullets couldn't keep up with him. His name was Nick. Just a few days earlier, he had been a student at MIT. He was at the top of his class, a brilliant hacker with knowledge that stretched from astronomy to geography and almost everything in between. However, ever since childhood, he had suffered from a condition that affected his legs, forcing him to rely on crutches to walk. On the day everything changed, he was on a road trip with his girlfriend Haley and his friend Jonah, helping Haley move her belongings. Later that evening, Nick received a message from a mysterious hacker. The two had been battling online for a long time, but this time the hacker had gone too far by breaking into Haley's laptop and monitoring her activities. Nick immediately began tracing the hacker's location. Jonah suggested they track the guy down and finally settle things once and for all, but Nick's mood was already ruined. Deep down, he feared Haley wanted to leave him because of his disability, and that this trip was merely an excuse to end their relationship. Frustrated and angry, he became determined to find the hacker no matter what. As they traveled, the hacker continued taunting them by sending photos of their car that had been taken through traffic cameras. Eventually, the GPS coordinates led them to an isolated cabin in the middle of nowhere. Nick and Jonah entered the building and began searching through it while recording everything they found. Suddenly, Haley screamed from outside. The moment Nick rushed out, he saw her floating into the air. A split second later, an intense white light flashed directly into his face and everything went black. Nobody knew how much time had passed after that. When Nick finally regained consciousness, he found himself sitting in a wheelchair with his entire body completely numb. Across from him sat a man wearing a hazmat suit named Hollies. Hollies told him he would help restore his memory. According to Hollies, they had encountered extraterrestrial life forms and might have become infected. For days, doctors repeatedly questioned Nick, but he couldn't make sense of anything happening around him. All he wanted was to see Jonah and Haley, yet nobody would tell him where they were. Then one morning, while being escorted to another examination, he caught sight of Haley lying unconscious on a bed inside a room. He desperately tried to reach her, but the staff refused to let him in. Later, after returning to his room, he heard Jonah's voice coming from a neighboring room. Nick called out and told him, "I saw Haley today, but they wouldn't let me talk to her, and I still can't feel my legs." Jonah replied that they had given him some kind of drink, and ever since then his heart hadn't felt right. The two agreed that they would share every piece of information they discovered. From that point on, Nick began observing everything around him. He carefully memorized which codes unlocked which doors and paid attention to who was allowed to speak with them. Soon, the doctors summoned him again. They placed various objects with different shapes in front of him and tested his ability to recognize colors and patterns, but Nick refused to cooperate. He told them, "Until you let me see Haley, I'm not answering anything." Left with no choice, the doctors finally took him to her room, but it accomplished nothing because Haley remained trapped in a coma. Afterward, Nick returned to his room and began sharing everything with Jonah. Suddenly, Jonah's voice stopped coming from the other side. Around the same time, experiments were also being performed on a cow inside the facility. Then, without warning, the lights went out and someone escaped. Nick quickly hid inside a dark bathroom. When the power returned, two staff members escorted him back out. As he walked through the facility, he noticed deep claw-like marks carved into the walls. Later, he confronted one of the doctors and asked where Jonah was. The doctor calmly informed him that Jonah had never been brought there in the first place. Nick immediately protested. "That's impossible, I've been talking to him." The doctor offered no explanation. Back in his room, Nick repeatedly called out to Jonah, but no response ever came. He finally realized that Jonah must have escaped. That realization pushed Nick to make a decision of his own. He would escape this place and take Haley with him. During his time there, he had carefully written down access codes and memorized every route leading outside. When the opportunity came, he put his plan into motion and began escaping with Haley. Everything went according to plan until they reached the final door, where a doctor suddenly appeared and stopped them. Moments later, Nick lost consciousness again. When he woke up, he found himself lying on a bed right beside Haley. Before he could even touch her, one of the staff members grabbed his arm. Haley slipped back into unconsciousness. Furious, Nick began struggling with the staff. During the fight, he fell off the bed. The staff members suddenly panicked and fled the room. That's when Nick finally noticed the truth. His real legs had been amputated and replaced with robotic ones. Even more shocking, he could now walk. These mechanical legs possessed extraordinary strength. Using them, he smashed through the door and charged forward. Anyone who got in his way was attacked as he continued moving through the facility. Haley stayed close beside him. As they descended in an elevator, the doctor approached Nick and warned him, "If you leave this place, the aliens will become a threat to you. You should stay here." But Nick ignored the warning. After passing through a long underground tunnel, he finally escaped the facility. The moment they emerged outside, Haley regained consciousness as well. Looking around, they realized they were standing in a vast, barren wasteland with nothing visible for miles in any direction. Eventually, they made their way to a road where a passing vehicle approached. They asked the driver for a ride. The driver turned out to be an elderly woman and she agreed to help them. However, after traveling for a while, the woman began saying bizarre things. Then she abruptly stopped the car in the middle of the road and started laughing in an unsettling and terrifying manner. Frightened, Nick and Haley quickly got out. Nearby, they spotted a gas station and Nick took Haley there. He helped her onto a parked truck and then tried using a phone to call home, but the phone was broken. At that moment, he noticed that the truck Haley was sitting in had started moving away. Haley was still inside. Nick instantly realized the driver worked for the doctor and was taking her back to the facility. Without hesitation, he took off after the truck. Thanks to his robotic legs, he could run at incredible speeds. Just as he managed to get close, the driver opened the door and knocked him to the ground. But Nick refused to give up. Determined to get Haley back no matter what, he got up and resumed the chase. Even though the truck was moving at high speed, his mechanical legs allowed him to catch up. Meanwhile, inside the truck, Haley found a gun and pointed it directly at the driver. Together, they forced him out of the vehicle and escaped with the truck themselves. After driving for what feels like forever, Nick and Haley eventually reach a dead end where the road simply stops. With nowhere else to go, they are forced to turn around. However, as they continue driving, Nick realizes something disturbing. They somehow end up back on the exact same road again. That's when they spot a nearby visitor center. Hopping to find answers, they head inside and discover a map of the area. To their shock, the map shows only a single road throughout the entire region. Nick can't make sense of it, and to make matters worse, Haley's condition continues to deteriorate. Having no better option, they decide to spend the night there. Later that night, the doctor's men suddenly arrive at the visitor center. Nick and Haley immediately hide from them. While hiding, they make an unexpected discovery. Their friend Jonah is there as well, the same Jonah who had escaped from the facility earlier, but something about him has changed. His hands have been completely transformed into robotic arms, just as Nick's legs were replaced with robotic ones. Nick instantly realizes that those deep marks he had seen carved into the facility walls were actually caused by Jonah's mechanical arms. He then notices another strange detail. The same number written on his own arm is also marked on Haley's neck. Jonah explains, "If you add up the digits of this number, it equals 51. That means we're in Area 51, where scientists perform secret experiments. They're experimenting on us too. That's why your legs were replaced and my arms were modified. To them, we're nothing more than lab rats being used for testing." Once the doctor's men leave, the group sets out again the following morning, determined to escape. After traveling for a while, they come across a military checkpoint. They attempt to drive through it, but their truck is trapped by a massive barrier system that can only be controlled through a computer network. Jonah immediately jumps out of the truck and heads toward the control room where a laptop is located. But just as he's about to disable the barrier, a bullet strikes his glasses. His vision becomes blurred, making it impossible for him to read the code or hack the system. Left with no other choice, he returns outside. Then, using the immense strength of his robotic arms, he tears the barrier apart with brute force. Thanks to his sacrifice, Nick and Haley manage to escape, but Jonah stays behind. By that point, he has already been struck by multiple bullets. Watching their friend give everything to save them leaves both Nick and Haley in tears. They continue moving forward without stopping, and eventually a massive bridge appears ahead. But standing directly in the center of the bridge is the doctor himself. Before their truck can reach him, the doctor's men throw a device onto the roadway that punctures the truck's tires. The vehicle immediately loses control and flips over. Haley is badly injured in the crash and falls unconscious. Moments later, a helicopter arrives and takes her away. Nick is also severely wounded, but somehow he manages to force himself back to his feet. As he does, his eyes fall on the doctor's name tag. It reads Damon. Suddenly, a realization hits him. When read backward, Damon becomes Nomad, the exact same hacker who had been sending them mysterious messages and who had previously hacked their college servers while framing Nick and Jonah for the crime. This time, the doctor finally confesses everything. He admits, "Yes, I was the one who hacked your college server and pinned it on you and your friend. We also hacked Haley's system and sent messages through her account. We manipulated you because we wanted you to find us. Everything that has happened to your friends is because you followed the trail we created." Then he reveals the full truth. "We use alien technology on human beings. Out of everyone we've experimented on, you are our greatest success. Your body and brain have completely adapted to the robotic legs. That makes you the most successful subject we've ever created." Hearing this fills Nick with uncontrollable rage. Using the incredible power of his mechanical legs, he launches himself forward at astonishing speed across the bridge. He accelerates faster and faster until suddenly he slams into what appears to be an invisible wall. The impact sends him crashing through to the other side. When he turns around, he sees the doctor standing behind him. The doctor removes his helmet and Nick finally sees the truth. He isn't human at all, he's a robotic alien. Nick then looks ahead and sees something even more shocking, outer space stretching endlessly before him. In that moment, he realizes he was never on Earth. He has been inside an enormous alien spacecraft the entire time. The The ship carries the identification number 23541, the exact same number marked on his arm and on Haley's shoulder. Suddenly, everything makes sense. It was never Area 51. Instead, it was a massive alien vessel operated by robotic extraterrestrials who have been testing their technology on humans. And with that shocking revelation, the story of the film comes to an end.